I'm Scott Morris. This is a very special episode dedicated to the crash of TWA Flight 800. For this story, we traveled to Long Island 1 week after the TWA 800 crash. Even though recovery activities were still underway, we weren't there to capture footage of the wreckage or the recovery of victims. We were there to talk to the men and women involved in this somber recovery mission. They shared with us their experiences, their insights, their sadness. We began with questions on what happened that night.
I looked out and I saw the fireball falling from the sky, it was like nothing I'd ever seen before. Just a huge ball of fire just falling down. It couldn't have been a flare or anything else. It had to have been some type of airplane.
When we first got on scene, the site was amazing. It was like a combat zone of boats, literally probably 100 boats, spotlights, an eerie calm with no wind, no seas.
It was misty. The ceiling was unlimited. You could see every star in the sky. Yet you couldn't see a foot in front of you because there was a sea mist. All we were staring on was the huge red plume of flame and smoke.
Coast Guard cutter ADAC was the first surface unit on scene, and it was immediately reported to them by Navy aircraft in the area that a life raft had been sighted in the water.
And they gave us the position, so we went to that position first. And when we got on scene, it wasn't a life raft, it was one of the chutes that they used to get the passengers out of the doors when they do the emergency exits.
After searching the area around the emergency chute for survivors and finding none, the crew of the cutter ADAC continued on towards the flaming crash site. This was only the first disappointing moment in what would be a long night of dwindling hope.
I think the one thing that kept us going through, despite the horror of the situation, was the hope that we'd find somebody alive.
As soon as we got on scene, we started picking up victims. We was looking for survivors. Everybody, you always hear about the miracle that happens. Something like this happens and there's somebody that lives through it, that's what we were all looking for. But when we started picking up the victims, it just kind of dawned on us that there's probably not going to be any.
I guess it was probably the next day, the next morning, and seeing the debris field, that really realized that there wasn't anybody left and that we weren't going to find any survivors.
I was still hoping to hear the call that somebody was alive, and when I finally accepted that, I still knew that our reason for being out there was important. It was to retrieve the victims so that their family would have some closure. When we couldn't find the victims, to even retrieve some personal belongings, to give somebody something to hold on to.
The TWA crash was one of the largest mass disasters the Coast Guard has ever responded to, and no training the Coast Guard provides could have prepared these men and women for what they would go through that first long night.
I don't think the Coast Guard can prepare you to go into an aircraft going down in the ocean with everyone losing their life. I don't think anything can prepare you for that. And for the initial sights and just the total sensory bombardment that you get with something like that, when it starts hitting you that there's no one alive here. Everyone is gone.
There was, nervousness when we first came up to the first body, which was extremely frightening at first. There were a lot of emotion, and mostly it was nerves and being scared because it was pitch black, and all you could smell was jet fuel.
Having 13 years of service, I've dealt with fatalities on the water in the past. Myself and the other members were working on deck, got ready to pull the first victim out of the boat, and it was hard.
It really started hitting the point home of what we were involved with, and you know, the devastation and the total loss of life, and the amount of the numbers of people who had been killed.
Me and another guy, actually 3 of us in the 21-foot RHI, we transported 16 victims in 3 trips, and that's going to be something that'll stay with me forever.
As affected as all the rescuers were by having to recover victims, the task of seeing and recovering personal items was for some just as distressing.
When the sun came up, we went back out and you saw book bags, people's clothing, baby dolls, and you realize, it's like 15 hours ago these people were on a trip for the time they were going to have the time of their life. And, they had no idea this was going to happen.
It was weird to pull up in a section of debris and find the overhead bin for 15A and the next section over, 15B, then 16, in the same area. Just like one piece of the plane just fell apart right here, another piece maybe 1,000 yards away, just in sections. We'd find personal belongings, clothes floating, shoes. One time we passed a Bible that was floating in the water. That was quite ironic.
We saw a lot of postcards in the water, and that was kind of like, wow, someone, will never know that someone, thought about them and sent them a postcard, because it's never going to get there.
We picked up an overnight bag with a Mickey Mouse doll in it, some other toys, hoping that we weren't going to find the owner of that.